Hello and welcome to today's episode of Courage Permission Slip. I am your host, Kia, and today I am so pleased that I get to welcome my friend Heather Yurovsky to the show. And before we get started, I want to tell you just a little bit more about her. Heather, who is the owner of Shatter Shine virtual career coaching, is a resume expert, job offer catalyst, and career confidant. Her unusual career path, now get ready for this, from practicing law to growing multiple successful startups to consulting with Fortune 500 companies to also being a COO, has armed Heather with experience across all functions and a wide variety of industries, including communications, hospitality, wine and spirits, consumer packaged goods, finance, tech, and social impact. And Heather's mission, I love this, Heather's mission has been fulfilled when her client is empowered to go after the next career move and has the tools to make it happen. Welcome to the show, Heather.
Thank you, Kia. I'm super excited to be here. I've been a fan of yours since I started coaching. So, I have been waiting for this conversation.
Oh, I'm so excited and I'm so glad to hear that. And, you saying that this doesn't happen a lot, but we met on Instagram. I always try to think back like what my origin point with my guests is or are, and thinking about like we've known each other for years and it started on Instagram, but since then we have collaborated in a couple different ways. So it's always exciting to bring things from the internets into real life. So really, really glad that you are here. And speaking of that, Heather, one thing I didn't mention in your bio, but I always hone in on this is, your resume, your experience is such a perfect example of how you start is not necessarily how you're going to finish. And so what I didn't mention is that Heather and I both have advertising degrees. And I'm just going to speak for me, Heather, but there is no way that I could have imagined that I'd be at this current destination from graduating with, a Bachelor of Science in advertising. So would love to hear from you. Is that it? Would you agree with that? Is that true for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, honestly, through most of my career, I wouldn't have envisioned that I'd end up here. It was certainly a progression. But no, when I got that advertising degree, I thought I was going to be at the big agency, working on client accounts, living a very glamorous lifestyle. I quickly decided otherwise. Sounds like yourself too.
Same. Yeah, I had the dream that I was going to be working at Leo Burnett. Like that was the thing, major for anyone who's listening, who is from Chicago, the Leo Burnett building on Wacker Drive. That was the pinnacle of like, you've made it. Mm-hmm. And like you, very quickly, I was like, well, nope, I'm not doing that. Oh boy. So, as you know, Heather, this show is all about courage permission slips and handing them out as much as we can. So I would love to start with you. When you hear the word courage, what does it mean to you?
Sure. Courage. So first, it brings a little bit of emotion with it. I won't go there quite yet. But courage for me really means an intentional action. So to define courage, I actually kind of need to think of the opposite, which fear comes to mind. And for me, fear is something that's paralyzing. You feel like you have no options. There's no path forward. If you can take that one step to bust through fear, I see that one step as courage. It's saying, I'm not accepting the status quo. I absolutely have to do something to change the situation.
I love what you shared about intention, right? And something that has come up from other guests is that looking back, they realized that what they did was courageous, but in that moment, it didn't feel courageous. They just knew that, well, this thing that I want to do is really important to me. And so that level of intentionality was there. And so would you agree with that, that you don't recognize that it's courageous in the moment, but maybe on the other side? Is that accurate?
Oh, 100%. I mean, I was thinking back, in preparing for this conversation, like, have I been courageous? Am I supposed to even be talking about courage? But yeah, I look back over my career and I made what I felt were not even choices. It was like I had to do something. I felt obligated or compelled or called. I mean, there's a whole variety of words. I never looked at it as courageous. But for example, I went to law school and I practiced law and I knew I didn't want to do it. And when I left, all of my lawyer friends were like, oh, you're so brave. What are you going to do next? You took that leap. Aren't you scared? And courage, again, is kind of attached to all those words, but I didn't see it as anything courageous by any means.
I wonder, so something you just mentioned about, how your lawyer friends were rejoicing in the fact that you're making this courageous or this brave step. And I remember when I left it wasn't my marketing firm, but when I left my marketing job to start my first business, which was a dog walking and pet sitting business. And so many of my colleagues, from my managers all the way down, and there were so many people that were like, oh, if I had the guts, I would have done this, or I would have chosen this path, or, this is an idea that I've had. And so to me, and it sounds like this is what you experienced too, it feels like there are a lot of people that have a vision of a different career path that they want to take. And it doesn't necessarily mean starting their own business, right? It's just, instead of doing law, I'm going to go back into marketing or whatever it is, right? But it feels like there's this whole chorus of people that are just like holding themselves back from that leap that they really want to take because it feels too scary. The thought of having to figure out something new is too much, or is more important than relieving the discomfort or the dissatisfaction with where they are right now. How does that land with you?
Yeah, it definitely lands. I actually think about that a lot. For me, how I feel when I'm uncomfortable or not where I'm supposed to be or where things aren't aligned is a far worse feeling that I'm not willing to deal with than maybe the scariness of the unknown, right? So if you're going to go ahead and take that leap, I am actually excited about what that brings and the challenges that might come with it and the growth opportunities, rather than this feeling sitting here, stewing. It's terrible, but it's, better than the alternative.
Yeah. The stewing, the spinning out, all those things. It is painful, right? When you, when you are aware to that, it's so painful. So it is making that decision of, is the growth that you talked about, is that more important, or is it more important to stay safe, what I know, and stew and just hope that I stop stewing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that word safe is perfect. For me, that's actually an unsafe space. I feel safer when I am moving forward, moving on, experiencing new things.
That's interesting. I haven't heard it put in that way ever. I don't think that you feel safer moving forward. Ooh, I love that. I'm going to start using that. Yeah. So Heather, thinking about all the things that you have done, and I'm curious to hear from you, how did giving yourself permission to be courageous, how did that lead you to where you are and what you're doing right now?
Yeah. Shatter and Shine was 100% born out of three things. First, just complete and utter burnout. Second, dreams that no longer served me. And third, I'd say a healthy dose of blind optimism. So I kind of see it as a complete career progression. Like I said, or we said, got my undergrad degree in advertising, went to law school, kind of put that life behind me, and went into marketing. I kind of fast forward a little bit, a few tester jobs. I went into marketing for a boutique liquor company. It was an early stage startup, super fun job, great people. I really loved every aspect of it. And I went from marketing over into sales and operations. I got to work with finance. I mean, I really got a nice, strong lesson in business. I did the hiring, did the recruiting, the onboarding, the mentoring, everything that comes with dealing with people, even helping people get new jobs when it was time to move on. And I'd say that kind of courage came in again at the end of that job, where it was, we sold a brand. It was kind of like, what are we doing next? And I knew that at that point I had a 1-year-old daughter. My vision for the life I wanted to create was slightly different. And I had set this goal to become a COO. It wasn't going to happen in that setting. So I kind of opened myself up to new opportunities, which again, right, some people might think it's courageous. There was nothing wrong with the job that I had by any means. But for me, it was that feeling again, like I have to make a change. Something new has to come into my life. So from there, I went and joined that social impact consulting firm that you mentioned. And I joined as the head of business. I got to touch all aspects of the business as the CEO's right hand. It was, again, a wonderful learning lesson, very exciting job to have. But when I actually got that COO title, I was fried. I was like, this dream is not mine anymore. I don't want it. If this is what this looks like, take it back. I will literally do anything else. And it's funny, you actually had another guest on Courage Permission Slip that mentioned working at Trader Joe's. And I was so fried at this point from the consulting firm. I told everyone, I just want to work at a grocery store and stock water bottles on a shelf. So when I heard that on your podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only person that envisioned my life that way. It was definitely an interesting moment. But yeah, so that was another point where I was like, okay, I have to make a change. I cannot, be living like this. It was definitely affecting, I'd say, my physical and mental health. My husband barely saw me, I'm grateful that he put up with me at that point in my life. And I had to stop and ask myself a lot of questions. Mostly I don't think I ever experienced failure, partially I think because I'm wired to not see failure as failure. I see pretty much failure as growth and learning and something that makes you better and stronger. But it was the first time in my life that I was like, did I fail? Like, what did I do to myself to get me to this spot? After a lot of questioning, talking to my network and all that reflection, a few therapy sessions, of course. I was like, I have to launch Shatter and Shine. I have to take that joy that I get from helping people. It's why I went to law school, ultimately why I ended up in social impact. Couple it with the strengths that I uncovered throughout my career, which was really helping people grow and letting go of that old kind of persona that I had adopted that was like, I can do everything. I can do anything you want in any business, just give it to me. I'm the one that's going to execute. So yeah, I kind of took that, if we want to call it courageous. I didn't think so at the moment. I think I saw it as self-preservation, honestly. So I took that step and launched it, and I haven't looked back since.
Heather, so I want to tie back to something that you mentioned earlier when we first started talking about the definition of courage or what it means to you. And you said it brought up some emotions. What are those emotions that get tied when you first to the COO, or what was it that kind of brings up those feelings for you?
Yeah. So I think, again, it's the flip side of courage for me. It's that fear component that gets me a little emotional, because then you have to stop and really look at your fears, right? And say, what is holding me back, or what do I think is holding me back, but maybe it's actually something else. For me, I think I have always been a self-motivated achiever. I am really, I hold myself to my own standards. I actually don't care a whole lot of what other people think of me. It is truly what I think of myself. So I think the fear component comes in there because that's just me. That's in my mind, right? Going over and over and over.
And we'll get to the fear piece in a minute. One of the things that I want to ask you, because I know without knowing for a fact, I feel pretty confident in the fact that someone who is listening to this has been chasing a title in their career, or a certain status or sign of status in their career. And they haven't taken the moment to examine whether or not it is something that they actually want, or if it came from someone else. So for you, you mentioned you had this goal of being a chief operating officer. Was that something that was truly yours, or is it something that you got externally, or a combination?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've actually never thought of it with all of this self-reflection that I did. No, I think it was my dream. I mean, I'm sure maybe subconsciously it might have been a way to make up for not practicing law, maybe kind of show my parents a little, right? Like, oh, it's okay, I found another path to success. But no, I think for the most part, it truly was for me, because I've always been goal oriented. So if I didn't have a goal, I didn't know what I was aiming for. So to me, that was kind of the ultimate measure that I had worked really hard, and that hard work pays off with that title.
Interesting. And again, my sense is that someone who is listening to this has a title, or is chasing a title that they feel like this is the sign that I've made it. This is the sign that everything that I've gone through is worth it. I remember, in moments of frustration in my marketing career, I was chasing, because a lot of times I work on the agency side. So it was like, oh, I would love to work for that brand. And so chasing brand, oh, I would love to be a group account director. But looking back, why? Is it because it feels good to say I'm the big boss? I'm managing all of these, account people, or is it something else that title is filling that I haven't been able to fill up yet? So, I mean, this could be a whole other podcast episode of why we go after the titles and the jobs that we go after, and what it means to our lives.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. You also said something that resonates. It's, was everything I did worth it? So I think that at that point in my life, like I said, I had kind of run myself ragged. I burned myself out, not just at one startup, but a second startup, building businesses for other people. And I think to me, that would have been proof that, oh, it's totally worth it. Now I can kind of take a deep breath, which is not true at all. But I think that's probably kind of what was going on in my mind at the time.
I would even say, so just dipping my toe into the entrepreneurship conversation a little bit. I mean, I noticed that coming up for me, because having your own business is hard in a different way than working for someone else is hard. but I have had those moments where it's like, this better pay off, right? Like these like working these insane hours, never taking a weekend for myself, which that's also another problem. But yeah, I have had those conversations and those private thoughts with myself of like, is this even like, does this even matter anymore? Is this worth it or what? So again, that could be a whole subject in and of itself. Oh my God.
It could. No, it could. And even those weekends that you mentioned, you know, that was actually something I took with me into Shatter and Shine and said, I'm not doing it. I have to retrain myself, you know. Yes, I do have the occasional late night, but I can't make it a habit. And I really need to be off on the weekends and put those parameters in place.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so let's go back into fear land. And so you mentioned, you know, fear being the opposite of courage. And in this new chapter that you're in now, what fears do you notice that pop up for you?
I'd say the primary fear is, am I going to end up in the same spot? So, and we actually just started touching on all of this. So I don't want to run myself ragged. I don't want to be burnt out. I don't want to dislike what I'm doing. So knowing that that's a fear, how do I make sure that I, you know, counteract that or balance it out? And then I think the secondary fear that actually is tied to that is am I not going to achieve what I set out for myself? So it's like, I want to achieve, but I have to make sure it's not at all costs, right? So making sure that I keep those in check, honestly, daily is very, very important to me. Or
do you have a system for checking that against yourself? And this conversation is particularly alive for me because I was meeting with my coach earlier and we were all talking about like these systems of like checking in with what our goals are and, you know, and what we want our experience to be like, right? Like what we want to feel like about these goals that we're pursuing. And if that feeling is not present in, you know, in a day when you're kind of looking back, then making the conscious decision of saying, okay, well, that didn't feel great. That didn't work. Now, what am I going to do? So this is really alive. But curious to hear from you, what systems or processes or routine do you use to check against those things that you're wanting to guard against?
Yeah, I have worked hard at this, so I'm excited to talk about it. Thank you. Okay, so first is I'm very realistic about my scheduling. You know, I used to have a laundry list for every day. I couldn't possibly get all that done, so I would end every day feeling like I have so much more to do. Now I am much more realistic and say, here are the top 3 things that absolutely have to get done. The operations person in me knows the amount of time that each of those tasks take. So I really, really try to budget out my time accordingly. Number 2, I really also think about what gives me joy. So yeah, I know that I have to have a certain number of calls with clients per week, staggered, you know, across certain days and times to keep me going. I mean, that's why I do what I do. I love serving clients. I love, you know, seeing them reach their goals, get better jobs faster and with less stress. So if I'm not doing that and I'm just kind of siloed at my computer by myself, you know, you do start to feel like it's more of a job than anything.
Yeah, right. Love that. And as someone who has stacked clients back to back to back in a 7 to 8 hour period, there is no faster way to want to change career paths than to do that to yourself. So thank you. And I feel personally attacked right now.
Not my goal, not my goal at all.
Right. But no, I mean, but recognizing that, right? Recognizing that stripped every ounce of joy. Like I took something that I love, and I over index on it one too many times. And being able to recognize that it didn't serve me, I made changes accordingly. And I don't, when a client is like, oh, I'm trying to get on your schedule, but I can't get in. And it's like, sorry, I'm not able to fit you in this week. And holding firm to that boundary, because I know if I step over it, I'm going to regret it.
Yeah. Learning how to say no is a whole,
yes.
That's in the next podcast.
Yes. Next topic, should be taking notes. So, thinking about those two key fears that you mentioned, Heather, which, I can relate to those too. How do you, in addition to really managing your schedule and keeping those boundaries, what else are you doing to, manage those fears or shift your relationship with those fears, or maybe even overcome them?
Yeah, I have a lot of self-talk. So I have given myself a lot of permission to say, I am not going to do it all. It's not going to happen. It's not physically possible. I really need to understand that. And that means, am I going to build Shatter and Shine as fast, and big as I want to?
Yeah.
Not as fast, as big, sure. The timeline might just be a little different, but it really is reminding myself, like, it's okay. There is nobody nipping at my heels. I am my own person. I am doing my own thing here, and it will all come in time. And it is keeping myself in check a lot. And those moments, where it does get hard, or I feel like I didn't keep myself in check, I am a fan of an affirmation or two. So I use them with my clients. I use them with myself. I actually have affirmations on my website. So at shatterandshine.com/affirmations. Anyone and everyone is welcome to get them, print them out, cut them up, stick them where you need to see them. I find that positive self-talk makes a very, very big difference.
It is crucial. It is crucial to have that self-talk in check, and not just the positive self-talk, but it's also really keeping the negative self-talk, right? That inner critic, those imposter feelings. It's really important to manage that. And I'm bringing that up in particular because, thinking about what you were saying about, okay, I have these goals to grow the business, and it may not grow as fast as I want it to grow. And I'm curious to hear from you, how do I want to ask this question? There's a lot of messages that we're getting from social media. There's a lot of messages that we get from the experts, right? The talking heads, the people that are supposedly making millions of dollars a year, doing something similar to what we're doing, right? And so I'm curious to hear from you. Do you ever have to temper that voice inside of you that's like, oh, maybe I should be doing this, or, oh, maybe I should do that, structure my programs or my packages, or add this new business line or service line? Do you ever find yourself having to battle the external messages and voices against, no, this is what I know is what's meant for me, and as you said, it's not going to pass me? Do you have to do that kind of voice check?
Not as often. If I do find myself doing it, it's usually because I'm probably on social media a little too much, right? But no, I think I have always been very comfortable in my own skin. I'm sure it's from the loads of positive reinforcement my parents gave me, probably a little too much. But I've always been comfortable really going at my own pace. When I do see, you're coaching, you could make millions, do this, do that, I think the blind optimist in me that wants to believe that is actually balanced out with that training that I got in law school, where I'm like, all right, I'm going to evaluate this from all sides. You're saying you're making X. That's actually not a profit number. That's a revenue number, right? And kind of picking apart the marketing speak. So I think actually our advertising degrees do come in handy there. You kind of know why people are out there saying what they're saying.
That's right. That's right. Oh, that's good. And yes, the marketing advertising part of my brain is like, I don't know. Even though I've fallen for some things, I still am. I have a that is a part of my brain that I can never turn off, no matter what I'm doing. Are there any other places, Heather, where you are, or maybe even thinking that you know you're going to need to give yourself permission to step out of your comfort zone?
100%. So the thing, yes, always. The things that I see coming for Shatter and Shine, so more boot camps, online courses, really being able to take my approach one-on-one with clients to help many more people. I think that is going to be a level of discomfort I have not experienced. How do I get that joy working one-on-one with somebody when I'm not working one-on-one with somebody? And also really putting myself, my face, my voice out there, right? That is, I think, a big one for a lot of entrepreneurs. It's like, you want to be authentic, you want to tell your story, but there's also times where you're thinking, can I just focus on, the content of the work? Can we just talk about resumes instead of, why I left one job and went to another one? But it is important, and it all factors in. But I think those are the types of fears that I will be facing for the rest of 2022.
Well, and so you talked about entrepreneurs and the fear that we have, or the discomfort that we have. It doesn't always have to be a fear, but just that discomfort. And, thinking about the people that you serve and people that I certainly have served, of even job seekers or people who are wanting to make a slight shift in their career, and they're needing, or it's going to be important for them to brand themselves in a different way, right? And so they're going to need to start connecting with people on a more personal level, using LinkedIn more, sharing articles, giving their perspective on things. And I have found, and would love to hear if this is something that you notice with the career seekers that you work with now, that's something that I see is a point of discomfort or fear for a lot of people, of having to put themselves out there as this person that has this whole body of experience. And now I'm going to have to use that to brand myself. And people feel that I've spoken to anyway, they feel really uncomfortable about that. It feels a little dirty to them. So curious to hear if that is something you've noticed.
I have noticed it. So I think it feels, like you said, dirty, and it feels inauthentic, right? So here I am as a career coach saying you have to be authentic, you have to be yourself, but right, there's a caveat there. But I do try to remind, my clients and other job seekers that it's not dirty. You are simply probably putting yourself out there for the first time, which will feel uncomfortable. And you are not being untruthful. You have done these things. You have built up these strengths. You do have these experiences. So, putting them on display for others doesn't really change what you have gone through. It's simply letting other people know that extra value that you bring to the table.
And the other thing that I share with people who run up against that is, run up against the hesitation of putting themselves out there, is to remember that no one cares as much as you think they do, right? Like no one is sitting and reading through the lines of your LinkedIn post where you're sharing your expertise, which, as you said accurately, is these are facts, right? You haven't made this up. You didn't just drop into the universe and say, oh, I'm going to start doing this now, and have not touched had some kind of experience in some way, shape, or form. I mean, you don't do that. But just reminding people that no one is going through and reading your post line by line to say, oh, that's true, that's not true. Oh, I can tell they're using marketing speak. No, and I mean this with love. No one cares. They're looking at it and taking it at face value. We have told ourselves stories of what this thing is that we're doing.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Absolutely. Nobody else cares. Yes, you do have to say it with a dose of kindness. And once you get someone over that hurdle of recognizing nobody cares, right? They posted something, they didn't get any weird questions about it. Then they start to see, oh, okay, maybe Heather and Kia were right about this.
Right. Exactly. So, okay, thinking about these, career seekers, thinking about the people that have to put themselves out there or who have a goal of being a COO or a lawyer or an advertising executive, just thinking of that person who is listening or watching this and has a goal for their life or for their career, but fear is taking priority over that goal or that dream. What would you like that person to know in order to take action on that goal or that dream or that vision they have?
Okay, I don't want to sound too coy here, but what's the worst that could happen? Really? I mean, ask yourself, take away all the excuses, every kind of objection you can put in place and say, what is the worst thing that happens? And if you can ask yourself that question and take one tiny step out of that little circle of fear that you've created, you will start to see that one step will lead to another step and another step and another step. And that creates the momentum that completely dissipates the fear.
Thank you for that. I love what you shared there about asking yourself that really simple question, but it's hard for many people. And I even find myself doing this too. It's hard for people to take a beat to say, okay, what is the worst thing that can happen? Right? Like, I'm not going to die from this. So now what? Now what is the biggest fear? But one of my favorite quotes that just really puts a nice little bow on what you said is, action is the antidote to despair. From Joan Baez is my favorite quote, where she was like, just do something, right? Just take a little step. And that despair, that, oh God, what was the word that you used earlier? That just the spinning out, right? The ruminating that we do, that will dissipate if you actually take a step. And a step can just mean reaching out to talk to someone, or sending an email, or putting a post on social media to say, hey, I'm looking for someone who knows something about this, right? Yes. And I mean, it doesn't take a lot to get the momentum started.
That's right. And to your point, you do have to be open to it. So there are people, I say you have to work through a certain amount before you can get to that point where you're like, okay, I need one small step, and then we're going to be, we're going on the train. You can't stop me. Yeah. That's beyond career coaching. I think that's into licensed therapy.
Yes. Which, we won't go there. Heather, this has been such a fun conversation. I'm so thankful to you for coming on the show. Just really appreciated you being a part of this and dropping so many gems.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. Really, it was a pleasure.
Absolutely. So before we wrap, Heather, where can people learn more about and connect with you and your vast experience?
So definitely on Instagram at Shatter Shine. And if you do follow me there, send me a DM, tell me, what's going on with your career, your job search. I'm happy to help you right there on the spot. You can learn more about what I do at shatterandshine.com. If you actually sign up for my newsletter, you'll be the first to hear about those boot camps that I mentioned. And definitely, let's connect on LinkedIn as well. You're welcome to use my network. There, I'm at Heather-Yurovsky.
Wonderful. And I will put all of this in the show notes so that people can link directly to you and make it super easy. But again, Heather, thank you for being a part of this. Really, really, I'm so ecstatic about our conversation today.
Me too. Thank you so much, Kia. Mwah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for watching and listening to Courage Permission Slip. That wraps it for today. Until the next time, make sure you're making your dreams and your goals bigger and more important than your fears. Thanks.